a webinar co-organized by the Israel Ministry of Tourism and Edge. This is the third edition. We are doing this conference with our dear friend Russell Kett from HVS London. And this year, usually we do it in London. So this year, obviously, we had to do it online. And we were really surprised and by the level of interest we've received for this conference from all over the world. We have more than 400 delegates registered from 33 countries. And I would like to send a special welcome to our friends from the United Arab Emirates who are watching us today. Before we start the program, and you will see we have amazing speakers today, I would like to tell a little bit how we can help you at the ministry with your hotel project. And just the last month, I've personally been receiving quite a few requests for investments in Israel in the hotel industry. We can help you three ways. First of all, finding a property or a partner or an investor, your planning address. I am honored to invite the Minister of Tourism of the State of Israel, Mr. Asaf Zamir. Minister Zamir, welcome.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here from my living room for the first time. People ask me if I thought that that when I'll be a minister, this is how things will be. And I said yes, because we actually started this government in Israel during the Corona pandemic crisis. And as you all know, that if there was one industry hit more than others from this pandemic, it is the tourism industry. But as you all are business owners, hotel owners, and entrepreneurs, you also know that in every crisis, there are options or opportunities. And I think that Israel is a land of opportunities post-Corona, and we're doing all that we can to make that come true. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you for taking the time and attending this webinar. This is my cat. And talk to you about Israel a bit, about what we're doing in the government, what we're doing in Ministry of Tourism. I arrived to this ministry after being the deputy mayor of Tel Aviv-Yafo for 10 years, dealing with tourism development, hotels, and tourism infrastructure in one of the major cities in Israel, and now bringing that onto the national level and trying to help with that knowledge into dealing with our crisis. Israel's, as you all know, or probably all of you know, in 2019 was a record-breaking year for us in tourism. Almost 5 million, 4.5, 4.6 million tourists in the best tourism year we've ever had. And at that point, it was clear to everyone there was much more demand than supply of hotels and hotel rooms in Israel, all over the country. And in every sector of tourism, and Israel has many sectors of tourism. From our inner tourism, which is 3 to 4 million people a year, to our religious tourism, going mostly to the religious sites, the Sea of Galilee and to Jerusalem and Nazareth, through Eilat and the desert, which is the newest project we're working on, and our north. Between all of these different kinds of tourism groups arriving, a larger number of FITs arriving, and people enjoying our last project, which was the marketing combined of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv in one city break pass, the religious and historical aspects of Jerusalem, the nightlife, cultural and culinary aspects of Tel Aviv combined in one ticket, was a very great success. We were on the way, and then Corona arrived and stopped us like it did over the world. Before it arrived, what we did and will keep on doing for the hotel industry, first of all, and I think most important, is subsidizing 20% of the cost of building hotels, or up till 20% invested by us with you in your project through our investment center in the Ministry of Tourism. That will continue. That's continuing now. And I think in comparison to other places in the world, that is not just a large amount of subsidization, but also a saying or the meaning of how important it is for us to assist in the helping of building of new hotels, and how the importance we see in the building, not just building, by the way, also building, also renovating, also turning old buildings or commercial buildings into hotels. All of those got a record-breaking number of 300 million shekels combined in 2019. That number should continue as demand in building hotels will continue. We also got a break on, gave a break of corporate tax between 2 to 10 years, depending where in Israel. And another important thing is helping with bureaucracy. Bureaucracy in Israel is sometimes problematic. Planning takes a long time. Licensing takes a long time. Construction, not that long. But also, we try to create a certain system in our Ministry of Tourism that assists you to make all those lines shorter in order for us to enlarge the number of hotel rooms in Israel. That will continue also during Corona and after Corona. I want to say a few things about how we've been dealing with Corona in our country on two levels. First level is how our government is fighting Corona. We're not the best in the world. We're surely not the worst in the world. And as time goes by, the number one thing we're learning is that this pandemic caught all the governments in the world not ready and not prepared. And we're learning as we go, and we're trying to do our best. And I think that in the last month, we've reached a situation where we appointed a general manager for Corona. And 2 days ago, his number one system to running life in Corona and running the work-life balance, if you wish, the economic health balance needed to fight the pandemic without losing the economy. And it's called a stoplight system, and it divides all cities in Israel to 4 cities: yellow, orange, red, and green. And depending on on the level of sickness in every city, there will be certain specific things regarding each city that will be allowed and not allowed. And I think that it is a very, very important program. Today, school started in Israel, and in 23 cities that were declared red cities, school didn't start. But in the rest of the country, it did. And if in the beginning of Corona, we were making decisions that were across the board, no matter where in the country, and no matter how high the number of Corona virus holders were, I think now the way we're making decisions is better. That's on a general level. On a specific level for the tourism sector. First of all, from the beginning of this pandemic, we've been assisting the hotel sector that has in the stopping of the cancellation of city tax, the option to send all of your employees home and send them on furlough up until next June 2021. Grants per hotel on a basis of up to $120 million a year revenue. On this base, grants are given to hotels 1 year until next June, helping them with bills. And on top of all that, we created a grant or a fund of 300 million shekels, or up to 300 million shekels, to assist hotels that didn't get any of the other, or enough of the other assistance. We are doing everything we can to make sure that in this dark day of this industry, the hotels will survive. I do want to tell you that the minute we started making decisions that that allowed hotels to stay open, the numbers of people inside Israel going to hotels in the middle of the Corona pandemic are outstanding. we created what we call a purple criteria for hotels, allowing them to open on their special Corona characteristics. And if you ask hotel owners, I think today over 50% of the hotels in Israel are open already. And in August, August was record breaking for some of them. Again, tourism is changing. Record breaking numbers are being seen in Eilat. Record breaking numbers of Israelis in Tiberias, in the north, in the south, on the beachfront, and in the desert, also in agroturismo. Numbers are amazing. In the cities, Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, numbers are slow for two reasons. The first reason is our skies are still closed, and most of the tourists in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem are normally tourists from abroad. The second reason, and this is yet to be determined, the way people vacate might change after Corona. And I think the demand for places that are outer city, bigger, less crowded, more secluded, more in nature, and quieter, I think the number of those, the percentage of people looking for that kind of vacation is going to grow. And I don't know what that means yet with cities hotels, but I think also in the cities, hotels might need to change. Lots of things are going to need to change, but what we see just from this last month is people who are adaptive and react to the situation are full. And the potential, both of inner tourism and of what we see with tour operators of people wanting to come over here, is phenomenal. And I think that the Israeli tourism sector, because of Israel's history, because of the wars, because of our security issues, because of the fact that we get more force majeure than others, is an industry that has learned how to bounce back. And I'm sure that the world will take time until the numbers we saw in 2019 will recur, but time is needed to build a hotel anyhow. So in your eyes, that's okay. But I'm sure that Israel will be one of the places that will bounce back faster than anyone, because we know how to do it based on our history. Another happy, important thing that happened this week is that our first delegation of Israeli high-ranking governmental officials flew to Abu Dhabi in the Emirates yesterday, and are returning, I think, within the hour. And amongst them was our Deputy Director of Tourism, Pini Shani, which held meetings there, came back and said he sees a great opportunity for cooperation in marketing Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem together, UAE and Israel, as if you want, peace tour through the Middle East, flying over Saudi Arabia, is a marketing potential we haven't had before. And if, as some people in Israel feel, this is just the beginning of more agreements to come, is going to turn this region into a very, very highly demanded region in a few years. The last point, which I want to touch, although our General Director, Amira Levy, will talk about broadly later, is our vision in opening, the skies for incoming tourism as fast as possible, and our development vision for the next few years. A few weeks ago, we wrote together with the Department of Health and with tour operators in Israel. We wrote what we believed was a method of bringing in tourists from abroad to Israel during Corona. And we thought it was smart to start in order to get all the guarantees needed. We thought it was smart to start with organized tourism that comes in groups, that you know in advance their itinerary, that you can see where they're going, that you can make sure there is they meet as less people as possible because of Corona. And we have submitted this method to the Department of Health. I want to believe that in a week's time it will be approved. And when it will be approved, we will be seeing lots of countries, at the beginning, green countries, that will be able to have organized tours to Israel. And that will be the beginning. The minute that will start, and we will see tourists coming back to Israel, we will be able, I believe, as we say it, it's manageable to open it up. And that is very, very important. I believe in a week's time, we'll get the answer for that. And the last thing is the day after. I see great importance in developing what our general manager will talk about at the end of this webinar, which is the desert. The Israeli desert, from Eilat to Yerucham, or Beersheba, if you may, is a boutique desert. It is very, very friendly. It is close to the cities, to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, just an hour's drive. It is safe. It has Wi-Fi. It is breathtaking, beautiful, and it is up till this day very, very far from its full potential. And that is why I am declaring, or will declare as Minister of Tourism, that area in Israel as a national tourism area, which we will work in developing in the next few years on every sector. Every sector means high end. We have 6 senses opening up in this desert in December. First 6 senses in Israel. We're very, very happy. But also lower level hotels up to even festival areas and glamping areas. It is a desert that we are going to turn into the biggest tourist attraction in Israel. And if I look at Corona today, and what I said before about people thinking twice before going to a city, I think that is where we will harbor many tourists in the next decade. So again, this was just getting to know you, sharing a bit of our vision, and hoping to see you soon in Israel. I promise you we'll do everything in our ability to make the investment in Israel worth your while. I think that even though we're in the middle of a pandemic, this is, and when we will look from the future back, will be the best time ever to invest in hotel development in Israel, because the potential is so high and the supply is so low in comparison that people that will invest today and will get our assistance will make, I am sure, a very good business in a very great country. So thank you very, very much. It was very, very nice meeting you. Thank you for being my first crowd in one of these events, and good luck.
Thank you, Minister Zamir. I now have the pleasure to invite Thomas Emmanuel from STR, Director at STR, to present an overview of the recent and current performance of the Israeli hotels. Tom, please.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Just going to share my screen. 1 second. Can you see that well?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Minister Zamir, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to be with you today. I have a lot of data to get through, so I'm going to start straight away with performance data. For those of you that are not aware, STR, we are the market leaders in hotel performance data. We're collecting data, as you can see there, from over 67,000 properties globally. In Israel, we work with and collect data from more than 26,500 hotels, so over 50% of total supply, so certainly a very robust sample. And we provide a range of reports and analysis, all of which, of course, I'm very happy to discuss with any of you after today's webinar. Just a quick reminder, at STR, we will never guide anything on price. We will simply tell you what has been happening. So this is our agenda for my quick 10-minute overview, and we're going to start with a global overview and also look at hotel closures. So this first chart gives you occupancy hot off the press as of last week ending the 23rd of August. And we've got 2 bubbles for each region. We've got reporting occupancy, which is just those hotels that are open and submitting data to STR. And then we've got economic occupancy, which looks at the total supply, regardless of whether the hotel is open or not. So that economic occupancy number will likely be lower than the reporting occupancy. So different regions, of course, different stages of recovery. China's out ahead, as you can see, and effectively all hotels are reopened there. And then you've got really North America, Europe, and the Middle East, all at a similar level. Slightly more hotels still closed in Europe, however, and then down Central South America, you can see the one region which is still really some way behind the curve. If we drill down to look at how we got to that point, we can see there China, Europe, Middle East, US, and Israel. And all markets, as mentioned, at different stages. China, for example, was static for 4 weeks and had a bit of a dip when there was a second wave in Beijing, but has now risen quite nicely. In the US, they've been flat now for 7 weeks. And across the Middle East, there was a 13-week period where things were flat. You can see, though, as the minister said, recent weeks, recent days in Israel have been very strong. And you can see that occupancy level quite clearly, but more of that shortly. If we look at economic occupancy, though, so that's looking at full inventory, you can see Europe has really had quite a good recovery after summer. But you can see there, Israel is not near China in terms of occupancy percentage, and that is because we're looking at full inventory and hotels are still closed. So I wanted to touch on that. And this slide shows for key European countries, as well as some neighboring countries of Israel, the percentage of reporting rooms. So those are rooms that report data to STR. It's a very good proxy for full supply that were closed and have been closed. And you can see there the orange line for Israel. So during the height of the pandemic, about 75% of reporting rooms were shut. That has now decreased to about 25%. So Israel fairly in line with most other markets. And if we look at within Israel, we can see that outside Tel Aviv, more rooms closed during the height of the pandemic. But now, as we move into September, you can see pretty much regardless of where you are in the country, the percentage of closed rooms remains the same. So that's where we are from a global perspective. I just wanted to touch on 2019, similar to what the minister did. And let's just look back to those glorious days, how we missed them. You can see there, RevPAR percentage change, the red bubbles, it was all about new supply. That was what was pushing RevPAR negative. Elsewhere, it was positive. Here in Europe, 10 consecutive years of RevPAR growth. And in Israel, a phenomenal year, 72% occupancy across the country as a whole. And those big three markets, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and Eilat, all above the 70% mark. So it was a fantastic year for Israeli hotels. And if we add into the mix here, both average rate and RevPAR, average rates led the way by Tel Aviv, 953 shekels, followed by Eilat at 852 and Jerusalem at 816 shekels respectively. So it was a great year. And of course, 4.5 million visitors, a record-breaking year for visitation as well. But then of course, sadly, we do have to come to 2020. And this shows supply, demand, and RevPAR percentage change over a long period of time. And it's quite stark, as you can see, July year to date, demand across Israel down 54%. We all know why, and it's not unlike any other country on the planet. But if we look at Israel and we look at occupancy on a rolling 7-day basis for every week from the 24th of February to the end of August, up to the 23rd of August, Israel locked down early, and we can see post-lockdown, we had 10 consecutive weeks where occupancy was below 10%. Of course, most hotels were closed, and those hotels that were open were really only open for COVID purposes. But since then, as the minister mentioned, we have seen a very nice recovery effectively in occupancy, almost back up to pre-lockdown levels. Now, of course, it's the height of the summer season, so it's below where we would expect it to be, but it's come back quite nicely across the country, and that has been driven by domestic leisure travel, of course. So that's occupancy. But if we look at rates, again, we can see there was a significant impact to average rate as a result of the lockdown. But over the recent weeks, as that domestic leisure demand has come back, we have seen rates pretty much in line with where they were, on some occasions even slightly higher than where they were in 2019. So hoteliers doing what they can do. They cannot stimulate demand during a global pandemic, but they can avoid dropping rates. And that's what we are seeing at present across Israel. So this is a good news story, this slide. And then this slide, where does that leave RevPAR? Well, I think this chart really does epitomize what has happened to our industry, not just in Israel, but across the world. And of course, things are still significantly down on 2019, despite recovery. And the reasons we know, of course, COVID's driving everything. The travel ecosystem has been shaken to its core. International visitors can't enter Israel at the moment. Corporate business is not there. Conference business is not there. And as mentioned, it's all being driven by domestic leisure. And that really chimes very much with what we see happening across submarkets across Israel. So as the minister mentioned, Eilat doing phenomenally well, 89% occupancy last week. Compare that to Tel Aviv at the bottom of the chart, that blue line, just 41%. So you can see the difference between leisure destinations and those that rely more on business, conference and international visitation. And if we look at the daily data across Israel, Thursday and Friday, the weekends highlighted in red, you can see again clearly domestic, leisure driven, the weekends are higher. It's to be expected, although that gap has closed over recent weeks as families are taking holidays. It's not surprising to see. So overall, a picture of some recovery in Israel driven by, as I mentioned, domestic leisure. But I just wanted to take a second to deep dive on Tel Aviv in a little bit more detail. And again, you can see that same chart, supply, demand, RevPAR percentage change. Demand down 60% though in Tel Aviv, so impacted more than the country as a whole. And we can see again, these same slides, it shows the differential, occupancy not yet anywhere near back to where it was pre-lockdown levels, and rates are still down somewhat in Tel Aviv. So the market is suffering, and you can see that again more clearly when you see, again, it is the weekends that are stronger because it's domestic leisure driven, but there's still a differential between those key weekdays with, of course, the absence of business and conference demand. But then to finish, just to touch on the pipeline. The pipeline is something that we've talked about a lot over recent years, of course. And the pipeline is still robust. We are currently at STR tracking just over 16,000 keys, 93 hotels. So if all of these rooms open, supply across Israel will increase by 31%. And in Tel Aviv, it is even more stark in terms of the number of new rooms in the pipeline. But it's not just Tel Aviv. If we look at the percentage of growth, if all of these rooms open that will come, the Dead Sea, Herzliya, Ashdod, Bat Yam, all of these markets are going to see significant increases in their pipeline. And when you look at who is developing as well, it really is a who's who of international hotel brands. So Accor, Easy Hotel, Hilton, IHG, Kempinski, Leonardo, Mandarin Oriental, Meininger, Nobu, Six Senses, all opening across the country. And then if you look at the domestic brands, Browns, Dan Hotels, Fatal, Israel, Prima, all increasing their footprint. So I think we should take heart from this. But one other point to mention, we've talked over recent years at the summit about how the Israeli market is still very heavily tilted towards luxury and upper upscale hotels. And the pipeline remains that way. 63% of all of the pipeline rooms are in the luxury and upper upscale segment. Compare that to just 10% in mid-scale and economy. So still, for me, a great opportunity within Israel that we discussed last year, the opportunity for mid-scale and economy hotels. But as I mentioned, the investment appetite, despite everything, is still strong because of the opportunities in Israel. So to summarize, globally, cases and deaths, as we know, are declining. We do have to watch second waves, and local lockdowns, of course, remain a risk. And whilst the travel ecosystem is showing signs of life, those restrictions on movement and quarantines still remain. Hotels have mostly reopened, and the business is being driven by domestic leisure. And as I mentioned, this is evident when you compare Eilat to Tel Aviv. The pipeline remains strong as Israel remains very attractive. And as mentioned already by the minister, the new demand potential, the flight from Tel Aviv to Abu Dhabi over Saudi airspace, very well timed for this webinar, of course, but new demand potential. And then to finish potentially on a slightly lighter note, I've brought you a lot of bad news as such, but our barbecue analogy fits perfectly the Israeli hotel performance picture. And I'll just finish on this slide to explain it. This shows the temperature of the fat on a piece of meat and the sponge of the meat, depending on how long it's been kept in the smoker on the barbecue. And it really neatly shows the typical shape of a hotel recovery. So you get that immediate spike of demand, and then that continues to build up and up and up until it levels off. And that's how the fat of the meat behaves. But the sponge on the meat is a COVID-shaped recovery. And this is what we're seeing across the world, not just in Israel, that immediate impact of demand coming back, domestic leisure demand coming back, but then the plateauing, because we don't yet see corporate, international, conference demand coming back. So we do expect to see that, but then that final increase in demand will come along once those sectors of demand come back, and hopefully, of course, in line with a vaccine and effective treatment for COVID-19. So a very quick tour. I hope that was beneficial. Thank you for your time. And Yoti Hashem, next year, we will all be back in Tel Aviv for the Israeli Hotel Investment Summit. I very much hope that's the case. If I can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I wish you all very well and good health. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for this very clear presentation. I like the barbecue comparison. So let's hear the HVS new report. I'm glad to invite our friend Russell Kate, chairman at HVS London and a frequent visitor of Israel, to hear about HVS annual overview of the country's hotel sector. Russell, please.
Thank you, Lauren, and good afternoon and early evening, everybody. If I may, I'm going to share my screen and try and deliver a 25-minute presentation in less than 10, but we'll go as fast as we can. This is a report which I hope everybody has seen. If you haven't, you can get it from our website, or you can email me and I'll happily send it to you. And additionally, both my slides and Tom's, we will be sending out to everybody. So no need to make notes as I'm going on. First and foremost, I want to thank my colleague Simon Holton for doing the heavy lifting with this report. Very much appreciate his involvement, and he's gaining a much deeper knowledge of what's going on in Israel and the hotel industry there every day. So thank you again. So here are the key takeaways. We saw, as everybody has said, the minister, Tom, tourism arrivals hit another record in 2019. And as we saw in our evaluation of that, hotel values gained a further more than 5% in 2019. We at HVS do expect a gradual but accelerating recovery from COVID-19. I don't quite like the barbecue going on for as long as Tom's slide might have indicated. I'd like to feel that some of that demand is going to come back a little bit earlier. Some of the international demand later this year, and with it, the business related demand that goes with it. It will take a bit longer for MICE demand to come back, I'm sure. We do think that some of the supply will start to slow down, the growth in supply. I think people will take the opportunity to look at their projects, and inevitably there will be a bit of a delay with some of them. And sadly, some of them that perhaps aren't that far advanced in the pipeline will be abandoned altogether, but hopefully not too many of them. We do see hotel values having declined in 2020, and they will remain depressed until EBITDAs have hit the bottom and there is some evidence of recovery, but we do see a continuing opportunity for high returns from hotels, particularly from well-capitalized buyers. And some of those assets are going to be acquired below their replacement costs. So longer term, we feel confident that values will recover, cash flows will improve, and capital markets will return to more traditional parameters. So just briefly looking back, this is one of my favorite slides because it shows the tourist arrivals line or the block of tourism arrivals in that red mass shooting up from where it was in 2016 right the way through to 2019. Some phenomenal growth, but equally so right the way through since 2010. And the change in GDP is also worth looking at. Israel's got a thriving economy and accelerating tourism arrivals in the past. But as Thomas mentioned, the supply of hotels was lagging behind. The demand was greater than supply. And hotel performance, as Tom has shown, was showing impressive growth. And we're very happy that that is, if you like, the basis on which we're now looking forward. Hotel values also grew in recent years. So the last 3 years in particular, the hotels in all of the major areas, slight exception the Dead Sea in 2018, but all the hotels generally showing an uplift in hotel value year on year. So let's talk about the path to recovery. These are our forecasts. We think occupancy on average will obviously have shown a deep dive in 2020, some recovery in 21, and then a gradual further recovery as different elements of that business comes back, particularly in terms of MICE business taking somewhat longer than the rest of life. But as occupancy builds back, average room rate builds back slightly each year, and RevPAR grows back to where it was, we think, by 2024. And that is quite a significant time. And I know we're sitting here in 2020, but hopefully, as we're projecting, by 2024, we will be back to where we were in 2019. Now, when we look at values, we have to assess the bottom line on which a hotel performs. And we've developed a baseline. If nothing had really happened, what would the value of hotels in Israel on average have looked like? So that's our baseline, a gradual growth year by year. Then what might the best case look like? What the most likely case would look like, and what the worst case. So in each case, the level of drop in 2020 is worse and worse as you go through that. So not too much change in the best case compared with the worst case when it goes negative. And so we developed our version of the Nike swoosh when it comes to the ranges of hotel values under these conditions. And as you can see, in the best case, values we reckon will fall by between 5 and 10%, most likely between 10 and 25%, and at worst between 25 and 35% in 2020. But in each case, recovery starts from 21 onwards and builds back almost to where it was in a worst case, but not quite. But if the dotted line is the baseline, you can see that by 2025, we've got there, and in actual terms in 2024. So that's our view of how hotel values are going to change over the next few years. It's a little bit doom and gloom now, but not all doom and gloom for the future. So I'm going to thank you at this point and shut up, because it's my pleasure to invite our panel to come to the discussion that we're now going to have. We have Karnit, we have Alexis, we have Jonathan, Shirley, and Ronen. And if you can now please unmute yourselves, turn your video screens back on, I'm going to make one final plea for our audience to send us via the chat function any questions that you may have. We will try and take some of them during the course of our discussions, but for the time being, I'm going to say thank you again, and hopefully on the screen you can now see, well, you can now see all our distinguished panel, if they would so kind as to join us. So Alexis, I can see you there.
Yep.
Shirley, I can see you there. Karmit, Jonathan, are you there?
Yes, I am. Shalom.
Wonderful. Shalom, and Ronen, who is sitting in his boardroom when I last saw him. Ronen, are you with us? So welcome to our session. We have 5 distinguished professionals as our panelists this afternoon. They're all keen to get their own views across, I'm sure. And I do want to stress that we want each of them to have an opportunity. So I'm going to keep my involvement as moderator as short as possible. But we want to get the views of hotel investors, developers, owners, lenders, and operators, which each of our panelists represent, to talk about Israeli hotels' path to recover. So I'm going to start with one quick question to each of the panel. I want you to tell me in one sentence, and I mean it one sentence, so maybe I should say in one breath, who you are, who you work for, and what you do. And in your second sentence, second breath, please tell me what one issue is uppermost in your mind when you are focused on the topic of Israelis' hotels' path to recovery. So what is the hottest of your hot buttons? Perhaps the one that keeps you awake most at night. I'm getting a message from Ronen that he can't switch his video screen on, but don't worry, you can unmute yourself. And why don't you kick us off, Ronen, and take this question first. If you unmute yourself, does that work? It obviously doesn't. So Jonathan, please kick us off.
Thank you, Russell. My name is Jonathan Fallick. I'm the founder and CEO of JF Capital Advisors. We're a strategic and capital markets advisory business, and sometimes when we like deals, we make direct investments in them. In terms of my second sentence, I think the safety, security, and potential vaccination is foremost and critical, because as soon as we have the safety part of the coronavirus in check and behind us, I think the path to recovery will be explosive.
Okay, I'm going to move to Shirley, please.
Yes, hi. Hi, everyone from Tel Aviv. I'm Shirley Kaplan. I'm the head of sector in Bank Leumi, corporate division. Bank Leumi is one of the largest bank in Israel. In the corporate division, we take care of the biggest company in Israel, including a special branch that takes care of the hotel business. Regarding the hot button, so one of our main challenge is finding the right balance between helping our customers to get through this difficult period, while considering, of course, the risk management as a bank. Right.
Is that okay? Good, thank you.
Yes, yes, yes.
Karmit, please come in.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Karmit Baron. I'm a lawyer. I've been a hotel hospitality lawyer for 30 years. And I specialize in, first of all, I'm the head of the hospitality and leisure practice at Meitar. And I specialize in owner-operator relations. We represent management companies, franchisees, owners, operators. And my hottest hot button is how we can, as lawyers and as professionals, consultants, how we can assist owners and operators to overcome these very difficult times, what legal instruments we can find to find understandings and to suspend obligations. Because at the end of this, as all of you are saying, the owners and operators are going to need each other. So that is what I feel my job is in the meantime.
Amazing. You need to be one of these deep sea underwater swimmers, because you can obviously hold your breath for a lot longer than everybody else. Alexis, before you speak, I'm going to ask our technical people if they could please arrange for the Dan Hotels head office line to be unblocked. For some reason, Ronen is not able to turn his microphone or his...
I think you can hear me, but the video is not working.
Yeah, okay, we'll try and get that fixed while Alexis speaks.
I'll try to do it in 2 sentences. I'm not as strong as Karmit. My name is Alexis Dolarov. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Accor New East Europe, and Israel is part of New East Europe. I'm based in Moscow. The second sentence, I did even write it, how to ensure that Accor, that our talents in the hotels and our partners are able to go through that 24 or 36 months and recover without major and irreparable damages. This is what keeps me awake.
Okay, so while we're still trying to get your video, Ronen, please introduce yourself and answer the question.
I'd say Ronen Nissenbaum. Maybe it's better that you don't see me. I'm CEO and president of Dan Hotels in Israel. We have 19 hotels, catering company called Iditi V'Taim, VIP lounges at the airport, and Dan Gourmet, which is a gastronomical hotel school. I've been at the company for about 2.5 years, and enjoying the COVID life.
So nothing keeps you awake.
Oh yes, I can tell you a little bit. Just a second, the video just turned on, so now you can see me. Hello, everybody. What keeps me up at night, really, as the CEO of the company, is how to keep everybody healthy. Starting from my teammates, my team around me, all the hotel personnel, keeping the guests healthy, and keeping my family healthy. I think that's the #1 thing that keeps me up at night, is what do I do to make sure to follow the instructions, to wear the masks, alcohol gel, and social distancing. I think that's the one worry I have, having been through this a few times, of people either falling sick and then you have to quarantine people, and you can lose 20% of the hotel, 30% of the employees of the hotel in one go in the executive offices. I think that's the one thing that keeps me up at night, is making sure that everybody stays healthy.
Okay, well, guys, thank you very much. At least we've now got you all on the screen, which is great. So let's move to another question, and taking into account what the Minister has told us, and thank you, Minister, for joining us. I hadn't appreciated that your English was going to be better than mine. How well, ladies and gentlemen, how well do you consider the hotel sector in Israel is dealing with the immediate operational challenges? So I'd like you to think of one and just talk about the one that you think is most appropriate. I'm going to move around a bit and let Shirley kick us off. But what do you think the hotel sector is doing to really address the immediate operational challenges?
Well, I will tell about our point of view as lenders. So this is very challenging times for our client that are affected so badly by the coronavirus. Of course, there is difference between the cities in Israel, but in general, we can say that they're hit. And as long as the crisis continue, the challenges will be greater. We are, as Bank Leumi, we take a long-term view on the hotel market, and we believe that in 3 or 4 years, the hotel market will be recovered. Meanwhile, we offer our clients some solution like loan payment deferral, like bridge loan, like loans that are backed with the government guarantee, just help them to go through this period. And in general, I can say that we expect that the owner will take part in supporting the company as side by side with the bank. And of course, we are subject to local regulation in Israel. But as I say, we take a long-term view, and we are with our clients in those times.
And clearly, both maintaining a positive cash flow and getting whatever support they need to look to the longer term. I was particularly interested that the minister was talking about the furlough scheme running through to next June. And it would be quite nice if he could have a word with his counterpart here in the UK, because our furlough scheme comes to the end in October. Jonathan, do you want to pick up on any one of these issues and give us your thoughts, please?
Yes, thank you, Russell. It's very interesting because the Israeli mentality is one of adapting to change and quickly. So the majority of people running hotels in Israel have military training, understand chain of command, understand issues, and understand how to keep people safe, right? So it's basically ingrained in the culture. And as a result, you see much quicker adaptation to change when necessary. In the normal course, not so much. In the normal course, it's done the Israeli way, the Israeli style, and with a lot of time to contemplate. But when necessary, and in this case, because of health issues, things have been necessary, you've seen the hoteliers, the hotel owners, and the operators, and all the service providers jump into action to ensure safety. And that's going to lead to a much better outcome than many other countries, likely much better than we will see in the United States, because there's a much clearer chain of command when there are adverse situations. And we're seeing that in play right now. And I think it's going to, when we have the virus in check, I think that's going to play extremely well for the entire Israeli hotel sector.
So Ronen, are you running, is that uniform that you're wearing, you look a little bit like a Brit, but is that just hiding your general stars on your shoulders and you running your military operations from your boardroom there?
This is the boardroom, yes, but no general. And yes, it's kind of weird to be in a suit when it's in Tel Aviv, 35, 36 degrees Celsius. So it is a bit crazy. And the typical Israeli style is no tie, no jacket, a little bit more casual. So apologies for being more British here in Israel. I would say, taking on Jonathan's point about adaptability, I think the resilience of the Israelis trying to figure out the multitude of information coming out, whether it's the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Health, we get so much information on a daily basis, and the changing. Our adaptability, our resilience, our capability of trying to stay one step ahead and keep everything going, I think is one of the incredible things that I've seen in Israel. And I think that is one of the strengths and what we've been able to partner with the government to try to stay one step ahead of the changes that are happening. And it was the purple protocol that the minister talked about. Now we're talking about the traffic light that starts on the 6th of September with different areas. So I think we're changing at such a rapid pace that our resilience and adaptability are tested on a daily basis. And one of the results I think that some of the hotels are doing, some of the chains and some of the hotels, is incredible marketing activities to the local Israeli market to try to incentivize them, give them a reason to get out of the house and come to the different hotels. Whether it's culinary weekends, whether it's musical weekends, any reason we can get the Israelis to get out of the houses and come while the skies are still relatively closed to anybody from outside, anybody that's not Israeli.
Okay, I'm going to move to Alexis, if I may. And while you're answering the question, I just want to point out that a guy called Uri Tab has asked what changes should be made to a hotel to take care of business continuity planning and crisis management. What aspects of that have you brought into your operations in Israel, Alexis?
Well, first of all, I think that the resilience is not only related to the country or the state where the operations are going on. I'm working over 11 or 13 countries, I don't remember, And in my opinion, this is more the industry, the hospitality industry that is really resilient, that is quickly adapting. We're one of the few industries that is working 24 hours a day, on New Year, on Yom Kippur, any day we're working, and this is day and night. And this obliges us to be very, very reactive. We have faced in this industry a lot of crises, 2009, 2015, 1998, 2001. I mean, there's plenty of them. Every time the industry has been quite quick to recover and to find solutions. I mean, we at Accor, we've introduced in all our hotel, I mean, and I think it's the case for all major industry operators, we've introduced very specific and very targeted sanitation rules within our hotels to make sure that not only our customers are safe, but our talents, our associates are safe, that they are taken care of, etc. I mean, this is what we're doing, and this is exactly. I don't think we're doing much different than hotels is doing, because this is, I mean, this is the aim of the industry, is to take care of people. I mean, to answer to the question of the gentleman, probably what we need to make sure, especially in business hotels in the future, is that we remove as much as possible things that are unnecessary in the hotel. And we go as much as digital as possible. Digital check-in, express and online check-in, check-out, no more menus in the rooms, everything digitalized through QR codes or things like that. I mean, this is probably the future in the industry. And probably in terms of construction, probably we would look at making sure that the public areas are more adapted to the social distancing, which will require obviously larger public areas and more lost space. But at the same time, we can also adapt these larger public areas to requirement of the new world and the new way of doing business, with nomad business people that could use our public areas to use it as an office, basically, as a nomad office.
Okay.
So this would be my statement. Yes.
Finally, with thanks to Alexis. Karmit, anything to add from what the others have said that you want to pick up on?
Just shortly, I'll mention that legal challenges at the beginning of COVID were dealing with disputes between operators and owners, especially with regard to leases. The hotels were closed. The question of should we be paying rental fees for a period that is closed. There was a lot of hope that the government, the legislator, the regulator, the court would actually say that this is a force majeure for the situation. I can elaborate maybe later on if we have time, but this has not been done. And the legislators and the courts have been telling the operators and the owners, speak, compromise, settle. And I can say that this was something that caused great panic to the industry at the beginning of the pandemic. But as we are sort of starting to grow out and open the hotels, and we know that this is not going to last forever, I think that people are really working on settlements. International management companies are coming toward owners of hotels, are suspending. Arrangements are being made for rental fees. And I think this is much better than we thought it would be at the beginning of this crisis.
Lovely, thank you. I'm going to change track and refer back to both Tom and to what the Minister was saying before about the pipeline. And as Tom pointed out, there are 73, I think, or were 73 projects in the pipeline. And the report that I presented before, we've got a whole page full of pipeline projects. But clearly, everybody's going to have to look at that pipeline very carefully. I was delighted when one of my clients contacted me last week to let me know that one of the projects that they're in the midst of dealing with has now got its construction finance sorted, and that they're starting to move ahead when things were looking a little bit as if they had stalled indefinitely, but they're one of the ones that are able to go ahead. So a shout out for, I would say those who remember the Blue Bay will know the project that I'm talking about. So how do you guys figure the various new hotel projects that were in the pipeline? How is the best way that they're going to be progressed? Let's start with you, Karmit, as you're on screen for us all. Why don't you take that question first of all? How are new hotel projects going to be able to move forward in this current environment?
First of all, I'm happy to say that I know exactly what project you're talking about because I represented the owners, and I think Ronen also knows what project we're talking about. I do see in my dealings that projects that are long-term, international management contracts, franchises, projects that are going to take a long time to build, yes, they are going on. We're moving on. We're working on them because everybody understands that 2023, 2024, when things improve, we need to be there with hotels that are ready for this new wave of guests that we'll have in Israel. So the long-term projects are definitely moving on. I think the reason, the minister mentioned, or was it Mr. Emmanuel mentioned, that we don't see pipeline for lower scale projects. The reason for that is that they're not being built for, their legal work, their banking work, their construction work is much shorter term. So I think that's why we don't see them in the pipeline. But I definitely think, and I can feel also from my clientele that, yes, there is interest. People are moving forward with all kinds of projects, Negev desert, rural countryside projects. Yes, we're moving on. It's going to cater local tourism. It's going to cater international tourism when it comes back in 2023, hopefully. And we are moving on and working on things.
So Shirley, is the development finance available for the people who want to progress their development projects? Are Bank Leumi in that field?
Yeah, first of all, I agree with the Karmit. We are going on. We are in this financing new project, and although we are in the middle of the crisis, we see these days newer investment opportunities such as hotel acquisition deals and new development. And we do finance new deals. The bank, of course, is more careful, and we do it selectively, but we do it. When we looked into new deal, we take into consideration several factors. First of all, who is the borrower and what is his financial abilities, the experience with him, the borrower experience in managing hotels and operating, or who will be the company that will manage. But all these criteria are taken into account, and I can say that these days we do some new project in Tel Aviv, in Eilat, and we believe that in 2 or 3 years that they will be finished. The tourism will come back, and this is the time to be ready with the new hotels. So we do it selectively, but we do it.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan, is there any interest from outside of Israel to help finance these projects?
So, Russell, there's always interest. The tricky part is really where's the source of capital. So on both the equity and the debt side, it's very difficult to underwrite the next 2 or 3 years, which makes extending new financing internationally difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. On the equity side, it really depends on the nature of the ownership. And one of the things that we see that is prevalent in the Israeli hotel market is there are many long-term, more passive owners than you might see in London or in New York or in Los Angeles, where it's a high net worth family, it's a business like Ronen's business, Don Hotels, that is a long-term owner. And in that case, it's much easier to underwrite to a 10, 20, 30-year holding period than it is if you were a merchant builder. So right now, very challenging for a merchant builder, but I'm getting asked several times a week by folks in the United States what distressed hotel investment opportunities they can step into in Israel. And they're not entirely sure how to underwrite in the short term, but they see long-term value. So I think much of it comes back to the tenor and the nature of the hotel owner or developer.
Okay. Ronen, you got a shout out a couple of times in the course of this particular question. Let me turn to a question that one of our audience has raised. Thank you, Ronit. Do you think there's a market for converting office buildings to hotels? Do you think that if companies are going to be reducing the amount of office space that they use, that could create a more immediate opportunity to turn them into hotels?
I certainly wouldn't say that there is no opportunity there. We converted, about 2 years ago, we converted an office building into a hotel, what is today the Link Hotel in the Hub. Obviously, it's closed because of COVID, but we saw the opportunity there to take conversion, which was quicker. Asaf spoke about it, the minister, about the bureaucracy in Israel and the regulations, and it is complicated, but they are really trying to improve it. And I think that it's far easier now, after the first few, we were the first ones to do it. Now that there's some kind of a system and a roadmap, I think it would probably be easier. There's no doubt that more offices are being vacated. People are working more from home. People have gotten used to it, actually like it, and are working more from home. So I think the office space is going to be suffering, whether people move to WeWork or people move into converting into hotels and using that as a best use of a hotel, of the building, of the site. I think there is an opportunity there. It's a little bit early right now to decide whether that's going to be a new trend, but it's certainly one direction it could go.
Excellent. And from a personal perspective, yes, I'm working at home, but I particularly like my commute from my kitchen to my office is 4 seconds. Alexis, if I may, what do you think the Israeli government should do, or the Ministry of Tourism should do, or should be doing to stimulate new hotel development and the interest of international companies like yourselves?
Well, I think what we've seen, I think a couple of days ago with this flight to Abu Dhabi from Israel is one of the best signs that Israel can send to the international operators. One of the probably things that were slowing down or where operator were looking attentively at what's happening there is that there's always this kind of threat of events out of control of international operator that will happen in Israel. So this is probably one of the best news over the past years, despite the COVID, and this is sending the right message. The real challenge, in my opinion, of the Israeli market for the international operators is that it's a lease market. And the lease market for international operator is almost a no-go unless you find the right local partner who is ready to sign a lease, and then you sign with him another contract, either a management or a franchise. And this is really the issue in Israel. If there is no trust from especially probably maybe from the bank and from the owners that that a management agreement might be a better opportunity than a pure lease, then it would be very difficult to see massive development, massive implementation of international brands into this country. We as an international operator, we most of the time we're traded on the stock exchange, and as soon as there is a lease, this is, I mean, you all know these guys. This is consolidated in our balance sheet, and this is too much risk for, especially given the situation today. There's too much risk to go for this. So, I mean, this is really the biggest challenge. I think for the time being, the ministry is doing absolutely the right thing. I mean, you mentioned the fair flow, but in the long term, they are bringing the right solutions to the table. Well, from an experience that I'm living now with one of our projects, I mean, there's also, in my opinion, the bank are really trying to get the most security, not only from the owners, but from the operators. But what do the operator have? The only thing that we have as operator is two things: is the brand and our reservation system. And this is a non-material thing. So we cannot bring this to the balance sheet of a project. So this is a second challenge that I see, is really the toughness of the bank with regard to the expectation from the operator. I'm not an owner, but from the operator in terms of helping develop a project.
Well, it leads me very neatly into my next question. And of course, we're all focused on you, Shirley.
Of course.
What is it going to take for Israeli banks? And you can give an example of one that you're familiar with, or just talk generally. What is it going to take for you to become more supportive of the international companies providing management contracts, as opposed to being, I'll use the word, fixated on leases? So can we get you away from leases and onto management contracts in terms of the way deals are structured?
I will try to, but I'm not sure the answer will, satisfy everyone. First of all, the contract is only one parameter we check when we check a deal. Of course, as I mentioned, we check the business plan, the location, the owner, the experience with them. So this is just one part of all the package. In general, you're right. We prefer to see lease agreement with minimum guarantee to ensure the cash flow of the loan. Another option that we also have with our clients is a management contract, but with minimum guarantee. So it's like a combination that gives us a little bit comfort, not all the amount, but it can help us, especially in this period of uncertainty. I think that this comfort is also first of all important for the owner of the assets, not just for the bank. It gives us certainty, and of course it's not deal breaker. So we have to check all the deal. We can be flexible and to see all the picture, of course.
Okay, I'm going to turn to Karmit, if I may. Taking on this, how can we get more international companies involved and interested, and getting more of a foothold in Israel, whether it's new builds or conversions or just finding their way into existing hotels. First of all, how can we spread the risk more evenly between owner and operator? And does that mean that there are some changes that need to be made either to management contracts, franchise agreements, and so forth? Want to take that one?
Yes, fine. I first of all, I completely agree with Shirley that we have seen quite a few, even before COVID, we've seen quite a few management companies offer minimum guarantees. That's a change. I've been in this industry for 30 years. We didn't have minimum guarantees and management agreements until a few years ago. But one of the interesting things that I've seen during COVID, and that raises quite a few questions, is that as international management companies that were active in Israel could not come to Israel or were less involved in the management of the hotels during COVID, what happened in many cases that I was involved with is the owner sort of jumped into the driver's seat and became more involved in the day-to-day management of the hotel. And that sort of raised questions about, maybe we can do with a franchise and we don't need full operation. And I think that also connects to what Alexis said we have the brand and the reservation. That's what the major brands are offering. And if we go over to maybe more franchise arrangements, that could bring a lot more international business into Israel. The problem, though, is that we lack white label management companies. And I think, you know, if somebody wants to make a good investment now, maybe have management companies that are able to operate different brands. And that way we would have an industry that is more like in the United States and Europe, and we could flourish both with local companies and with international companies as well.
Terrific, thank you. I'm just going to dip back, if I may, Alexis. What do you think the advantages are over guests using a branded hotel as opposed to Airbnb in this regard?
A branded hotel versus what? Sorry, Russell?
Airbnb, you may have heard of them.
Oh, Airbnb. Listen, I would say that what the feedback that I am from the users of B&B that are around me is that you never know where you end up. You never know what's the level of quality of the apartment you're ending up. You never know what kind of welcome you're getting. Is it the keys somewhere with a security guy, or is it someone coming to see you, explaining you everything? And this, you don't have these bad or good actually surprises in hotels. You get what you expect to get. This is the first thing. The second thing is now probably linked also to COVID. Hotel company will 100% provide you with a label in terms of safety. Disregard whether there's a purple certificate or not, but they have on top of the local certification, they have their own worldwide certification that brings you a certain insurance that you will be safely welcomed. I think these are.
I'm going to pause you there. We're running short of time.
Sure. I mean, these are the key things in my opinion.
That's fine. I'm going to go to Jonathan and then to Ronen just to focus on getting more international companies interested. Jonathan, do you have a magic formula out there that you can suggest will improve and extend the ability to get more international interest in the hotel sector in Israel?
Sure. Thank you, Russell. I'll pick up on one theme that Carmit started with, and that is if you're an investor in London and Moscow and New York and Los Angeles, you don't have all the infrastructure on the ground. So if you could tap into a group of architects, planners, attorneys, operators that are able to come together as a group, and there were a number of them, whether they were pre-approved or not, but if the Israeli government or the tourism ministry helped create almost like a list of these are the I don't know if it's approved, but these are a list of architects, a list of expediters, a list of general contractors, and here are local partners you could play with. That I think would be extremely helpful, because if you're based in New York or Los Angeles or London, you feel like you're outclassed, right? If there's a deal opportunity, you know that Ronen and Don Hotels will have already seen it, will be ahead of you, and why do you want to compete against the hometown heroes? The second way to do it is really capital markets related. And unless you are planning on being a 30-year holder of a hotel that you build or a building that you acquire and convert and renovate, there's no logical buyer when you're done. So if you develop, get your hotel stabilized, there's no real estate investment trust or similar vehicle that stands as a takeout buyer, and you're left with a sale to one of the local large companies. So, creating a REIT that focuses on hospitality properties or a takeout vehicle would allow more developers to come in and know that they could recycle their capital.
Fabulous. Ronan, I'm going to ask you the last question. Is this a time of threats or opportunities for hotel chains in Israel?
Oh, it's definitely opportunities. I mean, it depends on the company. I think that if I can add a few more sentences about what was said previously, I think that you know, I'm obviously biased, and I'm not so much interested to have all the international brands come back into that are missing in Israel, because there's not that many that are missing that are coming in. So I'm a local player, but I think Israel being 50% local business, any Israeli local player has already a very strong benefit. So if the Israeli market knows you, 9 million people in Israel know you, and the loyalty programs in Israel, you've already got a significant leg in the door of success once you have that. But there's no doubt that an international brand, having worked with Hilton and with Intercontinental, does bring those international visitors when the skies are open, and gives you that filler for the remaining 50%, or like the King David, that represent 95% of my business is international, not Israeli at all. I think there's great opportunity, like in, not to be negative, but if in New York they're saying that 20% of the hotels will never open up again and will convert, the reduction in supply will definitely benefit those still standing. I think the same thing will be in Israel. I don't know if it'll be 20% or 15% or 25% of the hotels that will never open up again, because they're in a situation. I think now people are shying away from leases, are being more careful with leases, understand the risks associated with leases and guarantees. And that's why I'm being approached far more on management agreements with owners that are starting to understand that, current owners, not development owners, they're understanding that a management agreement, there is an alignment of interests with the top line and the bottom line. So I think there are great opportunities for local hotel companies. I think there's obviously opportunities for international companies to come in here, or brands to come in here and further develop their footprint in Israel with what's happening. You know, in every crisis, there is a fantastic opportunity, and that is just a matter of time. Horizon of 6 months, 12 months, 24. Dan Hotels, 30 years timeline. This is a great opportunity to get into the business here. You just have to have a bit of wind to hold on to until we get to the other side of this COVID.
A bit of wind and a lot of chutzpah. Ronan, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, our wonderful delegates, please join me in thanking Karmit Bar-On, Alexis Delarov, Jonathan Falik, Shirley Kaplan, and Ronan Nissenbaum for their contribution to our webinar this afternoon. It's my pleasure to hand you back to Lorraine Morgary, and thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you, Russell.
And thank you, Russell. Thank you to all our panelists. I propose you now to move to the Negev Desert together. We will receive a briefing on the Negev tourism development by the Director General of the Israel Ministry of Tourism, Mr. Amir Halevi. Amir, please.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, thank you very much to Lorraine and his team, the Ministry of Tourism, to Russell and the HDS team. Really proud to be with you. I think that this is a very important message. And if I have to take something from this panel and from the speakers, that you are realistic but optimistic. And this is very important if we want to keep going and to continue the wonderful momentum that we had at the last couple of years, when we almost doubled the numbers in Israel. 2020, we had to be with double of the number that we had 3 or 4 years ago. And here in Israel, we continue to develop, as you heard from the Minister of Tourism. We just, Asaf Zamir, that just opened this conference. We just opened a new hotel in the Negev, Kedma by East Hotel. Hopefully soon we'll have the 6 senses that already ready nearby Ramon Airport, the new airport, and everything ready. And as you remember, 2 years ago, we already started to develop the next brand after the big success of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, the Negev, nearby around the international airport, where even we started before the Corona, 2 years before the Corona crisis. I think that right now, if we have to think about the next couple of years, this is the place to go. This is the place to develop, to invest. And that's why we are very happy with the international airport. And even for this year with the Corona, we already negotiated with the Ministry of Health to see how we can build a product with the Corona, with a capsula, and to bring airplane to Eilat, that this is the capital city with with more than 12,000 hotels, rooms in Eilat, so at the Red Sea. 200 kilometers from there, we have the Dead Sea, also with a lot of development. And I want to show you a short video that we already started to create and to develop to prepare the new brand, the Negev. So please.
Just a short plane ride from Europe, Israel's spectacular Negev desert is home to majestic wild landscapes, massive craters, and ancient sites, the safest desert treks in the world, and incredible eco-innovation. With the opening of the new Ramon International Airport, the Negev Desert has become easily accessible to tourists from Europe, the US, and all over the world. The successful global marketing strategy helmed by Israel's Ministry of Tourism has led to dramatic growth in Israel's incoming tourism and unprecedented development, attracting the world's most prestigious hotel chains to open new hotels, and airline companies worldwide to open dozens of new routes. Now is the time for the Negev Desert to become Israel's leading tourism brand that will also ease the burden of tourism in the country's center. We invite you to join us in our new vision for the Negev Desert 2030 as an exciting new travel destination brand with the tagline, Pure Desert Magic. The Negev, which covers half of Israel's land area, offers an attractive alternative to Europeans' winter and ski holidays with sunny desert vacations, such as bicycle and extreme sports, wellness and spa, nature, agro-tourism, and family holidays. The Negev Desert consists of several distinct regions, each with its own special experience. Together, they constitute the magic of one of the most unique deserts in the world. The city of Beersheba, the northern gateway to the Negev, is experiencing a peak of urban renewal. Now, alongside its ancient sites and modern development, Beersheba is constructing one of Israel's grandest new tourism complexes, the Beersheba River Park. In the northern Negev lies a green landscape that in the winter is covered with a magnificent carpet of scarlet red anemones. This colorful desert region inspires some of the country's greatest music festivals and spectacular nature walks. The Dead Sea, the lowest place on Earth, with huge
So as you can see, it's a taste of our new video. I'm sure that for next year we will be ready with the product. As you can see, in Europe you can ski, in Israel you can, at the Negev you can bike. By the way, I'm after a bicycle accident and operation, so be careful. Hiking, biking, even yoga festival, international yoga festival, big one that we have. A lot of festivals, a lot of marathon, Ironman. So altogether, this is going to be with a lot of new resorts and campsites and all over the Negev. So hopefully, with the coronavirus, we can continue. We have wonderful cooperation with the government, with all of the ministries. We are going to create a big budget for that, incentives and grants for the investors and for the hotels, a lot of new infrastructure, and hopefully we'll be ready. And let's hope for good news. By the way, I can say that in Israel, we have a lot of experience with crisis. This is the first time that we have the crisis is a global crisis all over the world. So let's hope that together we can see that soon we will start the recovery. Here we have very important industry ready to go. And let's hope for good news soon, but we will be after that even this year. Thank you very much and good luck, everybody.
Thank you, Amir. And I want to thank, if I may, in addition to you, all your colleagues and team at the Ministry of Tourism. They've done an absolutely fantastic job in managing the technical aspects of this, in getting all the difficult people that they were having to deal with, like me, to come into line and get everything organized. So please convey my thanks to all of your people. An absolutely fabulous job. And whilst thanking, may I also thank the Minister Asaf Zamir for joining us. I really appreciate the fact that he was able to make the time for us. May I, in addition, having already thanked the panelists, if I can thank Tom Emanuel from STR and all of the delegates who've joined us this afternoon. May I, however, reserve my final thanks for Lauren Moghery, who has been the linchpin of organizing this event. And it's been a pleasure for I and my team to work with you, Lauren. And I wish you every success and your colleagues every success as you follow up on what I'm sure we all agree has been a great afternoon and a really interesting seminar. So without further ado, I know we're running about 5 minutes late, so apologies for those who really had something very much important to do at 1/2 the hour. But thank you for joining us. Have a lovely evening and a safe return to wherever you're going now. And for those of you who are about to join with us in celebrating the new year, I wish you all Shana Tova U'Matuka, and thank you so much again for joining us, and goodbye.